The crystal chandeliers of the Han Xingpei Jewelry Group auction house cast a glacial light across the room, refracting off the polished marble floors and the expectant faces of the attendees. Xiao's breath hitched, shallow and quick, a hummingbird trapped in her ribs. The air, thick with the perfume of wealth and the undercurrent of something darker, felt suffocating. Around her, the murmur of conversation was a low, predatory hum. She could feel the weight of their gazes, assessing, calculating. Like vultures circling a carcass, she thought, the image stark and unsettlingly accurate. Her stomach churned, the remnants of the meager meal she'd managed earlier threatening to rise. The auctioneer, a man with a slick-back mane of black hair and a voice as smooth as oiled silk, raised his gavel. "Lot number 5, he announced, his voice amplified by the discreetly placed microphones. "The Wheel of Fortune diamond necklace. Starting price, 50 million. Xiao's gaze drifted towards the glittering necklace displayed on a velvet cushion. It had once belonged to her mother. The irony twisted in her gut, a bitter taste rising in her throat. She remembered her mother wearing it, the diamonds catching the light, her laughter echoing through their now empty home. Now, it was just another piece of their shattered life, up for grabs by the highest bidder. 100 million, a voice boomed from the back of the room. Xiao's fingers tightened on the worn fabric of her dress. Each bid felt like another nail in the coffin of her family's legacy. "They're bidding on our memories," she thought, the realization a sharp, stinging pain. 300 million. The voice was calm, almost detached, yet it carried an undeniable weight of authority. The room fell silent, the other bidders seemingly intimidated by the sheer audacity of the sum. The auctioneer's smile widened, predatory and satisfied. 300 million. Do I hear 350? Going once, going twice, sold. Congratulations to this gentleman. Xiao barely registered the fall of the gavel. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions: grief, anger, a chilling sense of helplessness. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to block out the suffocating reality of her situation. When she opened them again, the necklace was gone, and the auctioneer was addressing the room once more. His tone, however, had shifted, taking on a disconcerting, almost lascivious quality. A spotlight illuminated a small, elevated platform. Xiao's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She knew what was coming. She had known from the moment she was dragged into this gilded cage. Still, a part of her, a small, desperate flicker of hope, had refused to believe it. And now, the auctioneer's voice dripped with a sickening sweetness, the finale of this auction. A rare and exquisite treasure, the girl's first night. His words hung in the air, heavy and obscene. Xiao's blood ran cold. She wanted to scream, to fight, to claw her way out of this nightmare. But her body felt leaden, her voice trapped in her throat. The room swam before her eyes, the faces blurring into a grotesque, leering mask. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her, the suffocating perfume, the hushed whispers, the predatory gazes. It was all too much. Starting bid, 1 million. The numbers climbed, each bid a fresh wound, tearing at her already frayed nerves. Xiao closed her eyes, trying to detach herself from the horror unfolding around her. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. But the relentless rise of the bids, the murmurs of the crowd, the auctioneer's oily voice, were a constant, brutal reminder of her reality. 300 million. The same voice that had purchased her mother's necklace. Calm, detached, and utterly chilling. The bidding stopped abruptly. No one dared to challenge him. The gavel fell. Sold. The world tilted on its axis. Xiao felt a hand on her arm, guiding her towards the back of the room. She moved mechanically, her body numb, her mind a blank canvas. She was led to a private room, opulent and suffocating. A man sat at a mahogany desk, his back to her. He turned slowly, and Xiao's breath caught in her throat. It was him. Mr. Han. The mysterious man who had purchased her mother's necklace and now her. His face was a mask of cool indifference, his eyes dark and unreadable. He gestured towards a chair opposite him. Sit. Xiao sank into the chair, her legs feeling weak and unsteady. The room seemed to spin around her. Mr. Han leaned back, his gaze fixed on her, assessing, dissecting. You know who I am, don't you, Xiao? He asked, his voice soft, almost a whisper. It sent a shiver down her spine. Xiao stared at him, her mind racing. His words, his tone, the way he said her name, a memory flickered, a fragment of a conversation overheard years ago. A name whispered in hushed tones. Phone Li, she breathed, the name barely audible. A flicker of something surprise, perhaps, or something darker crossed his face. He leaned forward, his eyes locking with hers. Clever girl, he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. It wasn't a kind smile. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. What do you want? She asked, her voice trembling. He leaned back again, his expression unreadable. Revenge, he said, the word hanging in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. He picked up the Wheel of Fortune necklace, its diamonds glittering in the dim light. And you, Xiao, he continued, his gaze fixed on the necklace, are a key piece in my game. Outside, the auction continued, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses filtering through the closed door. But in that room, the air was thick with tension, with the weight of secrets and the promise of something far more dangerous than Xiao could have ever imagined. She was trapped, a pawn in a game she didn't understand, her life irrevocably intertwined with the man who called himself Mr. Han, the man whose true name was Phone Li, the man whose eyes held a darkness that mirrored the abyss opening up beneath her feet. The opulent room, suffocating in its gilded cage of luxury, reeked of money and secrets. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the polished mahogany table, reflecting in the icy depths of Mr. Han's eyes. Xiao stood before him, her cheap dress a stark contrast to the room's extravagance, her heart a trapped bird fluttering against her ribs. The auctioneer's gavel still echoed in her ears, a final, brutal punctuation mark on her family's demise. 300 million. The number swam in her head, a grotesque sum that now defined her worth. Or rather, the worth of her supposed virginity. A bitter laugh threatened to claw its way up her throat. Virginity. As if that mattered anymore. As if anything mattered anymore. He watched her, this Mr. Han, his gaze unnervingly sharp, dissecting her with a clinical precision that sent a shiver crawling down her spine. His face, a mask of impassive calm, betrayed nothing of the thoughts churning beneath the surface. She could feel the weight of his scrutiny, a palpable force that threatened to crush her. What did he want from her? Why her? Questions clawed at her, frantic and unanswered. Please, sit. His voice, smooth as polished jade, sliced through the tense silence. The words were polite, yet the underlying command was unmistakable. Xiao hesitated, her legs trembling with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. She lowered herself onto the plush velvet chair, the luxurious fabric a mockery of her own threadbare existence. Her fingers clenched in her lap, the nails digging into her palms, a small, desperate act of defiance. The secretary, a shadow in a perfectly tailored suit, stood silently by the door, his presence a constant reminder that she was trapped, a pawn in a game she didn't understand. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, with the ghosts of the auction, with the phantom scent of desperation and decay. I spent 300 million to buy your virginity. Mr. Han's words hung in the air, each syllable a drop of poison seeping into her already wounded soul. She flinched, not at the crassness of his statement, but at the cold, calculating tone. He spoke not of desire, but of acquisition, as if she were nothing more than a valuable artifact to be added to his collection. Shame burned hot in her cheeks, mingling with the ever-present ache of grief. 300 million. The price of her family's ruin. He leaned forward, the movement subtle yet predatory. Don't you think the Fong family and the C family are very similar? His voice, soft yet edged with steel, resonated with an unsettling familiarity. Fong. The name struck a discordant chord in her memory, a faint echo from a past she struggled to grasp. Xiao's breath hitched. Fong. Where had she heard that name before? It danced on the periphery of her consciousness, tantalizingly close yet frustratingly out of reach. Her mind, still reeling from the shock of the auction, felt like a shattered mirror, reflecting fragmented images of a life she no longer recognized. All investment failures, Mr. Han continued, his words laced with a chilling detachment. Family members dead or injured, the fragments began to coalesce, forming a blurry, unsettling picture. Investment failures. Her father's frantic phone calls, the mounting debts, the whispers of bankruptcy. Her mother's accident, the hospital bills, the crushing weight of despair. And then the fire. The inferno that had consumed their home, their lives, everything. Xiao's heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the suffocating silence. The Fong family. The C family. The parallels were too stark, too chilling to ignore. A cold dread seeped into her bones, freezing the blood in her veins. This wasn't just about money. This was about something far more sinister. He watched her, his gaze piercing, as if he could see the turbulent thoughts swirling within her. She might have a clue. She. Who was she? Her mother. The thought sent a jolt of electricity through her. Had her mother known something? Something that had led to their ruin? The questions clawed at her throat, choking her. Xiao looked at him, her eyes wide with a dawning realization. The carefully constructed mask of Mr. Han began to crack, revealing glimpses of something else beneath the surface. A flicker of pain. A shadow of vulnerability. And then, a flash of recognition. The sharp angles of his jaw, the intense gaze, the way he held himself. It couldn't be suddenly, a memory surfaced, sharp and clear, from the depths of her childhood. A boy, a little older than her, standing in the shadows of a grand estate. Fong Li. Her father's business partner's son. The boy who had vanished 10 years ago when the Fong family's empire had crumbled overnight. Fong Li. The name escaped her lips, a whisper of disbelief. The flicker of surprise in his eyes confirmed her suspicions. The mask shattered completely, revealing the face of the boy she had once known, now hardened by years of pain and fueled by a burning desire for revenge. The air crackled with unspoken words, with the weight of shared history, with the ghosts of the past rising from the ashes. The power dynamic shifted, subtly but irrevocably. The hunter had become the hunted. The muted hum of the air conditioner was the only sound in the starkly modern room. Xiao sat rigidly on the edge of the plush king-sized bed, the crisp white sheets a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within her. 300 million. The number echoed in her mind, a heavy weight pressing down on her already fractured spirit. Sold. Like some object. Her fingers traced the intricate patterns woven into the bedspread, each loop a reminder of the gilded cage she now inhabited. He hadn't touched her. Not physically. But the violation ran deeper, a cold dread that seeped into her bones. She glanced at the closed bathroom door, the faint sound of running water a stark reminder of his presence. Mr. Han. The name tasted like ash in her mouth. What did he want? Why her? The questions clawed at her, a desperate plea for answers in the suffocating silence. He emerged moments later, the steam from the shower clinging to him like a second skin. He wore a simple black shirt and trousers, the understated attire doing little to diminish the aura of power that radiated from him. He met her gaze, his eyes dark and unreadable, like the depths of a still lake hiding untold secrets. For a fleeting moment, she saw a flicker of something else in those depths of vulnerability, a weariness that mirrored her own. Then, it was gone, replaced by the cool composure that had become his trademark. He moved with a quiet grace, crossing the room to a small table where a briefcase lay open, revealing neat stacks of cash. "Here," he said, his voice low and even. "This is for you." Xiao stared at the money, a wave of nausea washing over her. It felt dirty, tainted. "Let me go," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can agree to any condition you ask that I will pay you back the 300 million. Each word felt like a betrayal, a confirmation of her powerlessness. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement playing on his lips. "Pay me back? How, Miss C?" The question hung in the air, thick with unspoken accusations. Xiao flinched. How could she explain? How could she convey the crushing weight of her family's ruin, the desperation that had led her here? He seemed to read her thoughts, his expression softening ever so slightly. "You misunderstand." He closed the briefcase, the sharp click echoing in the room. "This isn't about the money." He turned to face her, his gaze intense. "This is about giving you a chance." "A chance?" Xiao's mind reeled. A chance for what? To escape the humiliation, the fear? Or something else entirely? Her heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I don't understand," she stammered, the words catching in her throat. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "You will," he said, his voice laced with a strange mixture of weariness and determination. "In time, you will." He gestured towards a second door in the room. "There's a car waiting. New identity, passport, everything you need to start over. Escape." The word resonated deep within her, a spark of hope igniting in the darkness. But even as relief washed over her, a new fear took root. What was the price of this freedom? She searched his face, seeking answers in the enigmatic depths of his eyes. "Why?" she whispered, the question barely audible. "Why me? Why this kindness?" It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense anymore. He hesitated, his gaze drifting towards the window overlooking the city lights. "Let's just say," he said finally, his voice low and almost melancholic, "we have a common enemy." He turned back to her, his expression hardening. "Take the money. Take the chance. Disappear." Xiao's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragmented puzzle of his words. A common enemy? What could he possibly mean? The Feng family? The thought struck her like a lightning bolt, a sudden, blinding flash of insight. But how? How could this powerful, enigmatic man be connected to her family's downfall? "Are you awake?" Her own voice startled her, the words slipping out before she could stop them. She remembered the rumors, the whispers about Feng Li, the heir presumed dead, the architect of her family's ruin. Could it be? Could this man, this Mr. Han, actually be? He paused, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "I'm still underage," she added, her voice trembling, the words a desperate attempt to deflect, to deny the terrifying suspicion taking root in her mind. A muscle twitched in his jaw. 2 hours. His voice was barely a whisper, the words laced with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. He looked away, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the walls of the room. 2 hours, and then you leave. Understand? 2 hours. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. 2 hours to grapple with the shattering realization, the impossible truth that was slowly unfolding before her. 2 hours to decide whether to embrace the escape he offered or to confront the ghost that had haunted her family for a decade. 2 hours to confront the man who stood before her, the man who was not Mr. Han, but someone far more dangerous, far more intimately connected to the wreckage of her life. Fong Li. The midday sun cast long shadows across the meticulously manicured lawn of Mrs. Zhou's residence. A facade of tranquility masked the turmoil brewing within its walls, a turmoil mirrored in the heart of the young woman who stood at the gate. Yao Weiwei pressed the doorbell, a nervous tremor in her finger. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. This wasn't some casual visit. This was a carefully orchestrated act, a play in which she was an unwitting pawn. She swallowed, the metallic tang of fear coating her tongue. Xiao, if only she knew what she was getting Weiwei into. The door swung open, revealing a woman whose elegance barely concealed the weariness etched on her face. Mrs. Zhou. Weiwei offered a hesitant smile. Mrs. Zhou, hello. I'm Yao Weiwei, Xiao's friend. She asked me to drop these off. Weiwei extended a basket overflowing with meticulously arranged fruits, a gift intended to soften the blow, to pave the way for the man standing just behind her. Xiao. Mrs. Zhou's voice held a note of surprise, a flicker of something akin to apprehension in her eyes. How thoughtful of her. Please, come in. Weiwei stepped inside, the cool air of the house a stark contrast to the oppressive humidity outside. Her senses heightened, taking in the subtle scent of sandalwood and the faint echo of a child's laughter from somewhere deeper within the house. She glanced back at Mr. Han, whose impassive face betrayed nothing of the storm raging within. He'd introduced himself as Mr. Han, Xiao's new tutor, a plausible enough lie in this charade they were enacting. She wondered if Mrs. Zhou believed it. She hoped so. For both their sakes. Xiao mentioned you were looking for a tutor for your son, Mr. Han said, his voice smooth as polished jade. He moved with an effortless grace that belied the coiled tension Weiwei knew simmered beneath his surface. He was a predator, she realized, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And they were playing a dangerous game. Yes, Mrs. Zhou replied, her gaze shifting between Mr. Han and Weiwei. He's been struggling a bit lately. Her words held a strained undercurrent that Weiwei couldn't quite decipher. Was it suspicion? Fear? Or simply the exhaustion of a woman bearing the weight of a world she could no longer control? While Mrs. Zhou ushered them into the living room, Mr. Han's gaze swept over the meticulously arranged furniture, the expensive artwork adorning the walls, the subtle signs of wealth that seemed to mock Xiao's current destitution. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath his cheekbone. 10 years. 10 years since his own family had been stripped of everything, reduced to ashes and dust. The rage, a constant, simmering ember in his chest, flared anew. He had to maintain control. He needed the truth. Your home is lovely, he commented, the words laced with a subtle irony that only Weiwei seemed to notice. She saw the way his eyes lingered on a framed photograph on the mantelpiece, a picture of Mr. Zhou, his arm draped possessively around a much younger Mrs. Zhou. Their smiles were frozen in time, a stark contrast to the unease radiating from the woman standing before them now. The conversation flowed, a carefully constructed dance of pleasantries and veiled inquiries. Mr. Han, the charming tutor, skillfully steered the discussion toward Mr. Zhou's business dealings, his connections, his habits. Weiwei listened, her heart pounding in her ears, each word a potential landmine. Mr. Zhou spends most of his time in his study, Mrs. Zhou revealed, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. He's always been a private man. Private. Mr. Han's mind latched onto the word. What secrets did Mr. Zhou guard within the confines of his study? What connections did he have to the downfall of both the Si and Feng families? He had to see it, that study. He needed to breathe the same air, touch the same surfaces. Perhaps I could see his study? Mr. Han suggested, his voice casual, almost nonchalant. It would help me understand his learning environment. Mrs. Zhou hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. I suppose so. She led the way, her steps slow, almost reluctant. Mr. Han followed, his senses on high alert, absorbing every detail. The layout of the house, the placement of the furniture, the subtle scent of dust and old paper emanating from the closed study door. He paused, his hand hovering over the doorknob. A strange premonition washed over him, a sense of unease that settled deep in his gut. Inside, the study was dimly lit, the heavy curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The air was thick with the smell of leather and tobacco. Books lined the walls, floor to ceiling, creating a sense of claustrophobic intimacy. Mr. Han's gaze swept over the room, taking in the ornate desk, the antique globe, the framed certificates proclaiming Mr. Zhou's accomplishments. A facade. Everything was a facade. He walked towards the bookshelf, his fingers trailing along the spines of the leather-bound volumes. A faint click echoed in the silence. He paused, his eyes narrowing. He pressed again, and a section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a narrow passage leading into darkness. A secret room. Mr. Han exchanged a look with Weiwei, a silent acknowledgement of the discovery. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with the weight of the secrets hidden within those shadowed walls. He stepped inside, Weiwei close behind. The secret room was small, barely more than a closet, lined with shelves filled with files and documents. He picked up a folder, his fingers tracing the embossed letters, Feng Enterprises. His breath hitched. He opened the folder, his eyes scanning the contents. Financial statements, legal documents, correspondence. Evidence. Damning evidence linking Mr. Zhou to the orchestrated downfall of his family. His hand trembled, the paper rustling in the suffocating silence. Zhou's study actually has a secret room, Mr. Han murmured, his voice low, almost a whisper. He looked at Weiwei, his eyes dark with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. Mr. Zhou is indeed problematic. The pieces were falling into place, forming a grim picture of betrayal and conspiracy, a picture that implicated not only the Zhou family but the Si family as well. And Xiao, innocent Xiao, was caught in the center of it all. He had to protect her. He would protect her. Even if it meant tearing down the world around them. The opulent chandeliers of Sun City Casino cast a kaleidoscopic glow across the gaming floor, a stark contrast to the chilling emptiness in Xiao's heart. The rhythmic clatter of chips, the hushed whispers of gamblers, the heady scent of perfume and desperation, it was a world she knew all too well. She hadn't imagined she would return, not like this, a prize bought and paid for. A cold dread coiled in her stomach, a stark reminder of the nights she spent navigating the treacherous currents of this gilded cage, a private lady, forced to entertain men she loathed. Each smile a carefully constructed mask, each laugh a hollow echo. Mr. Han, the enigmatic stranger who now held her fate in his hands, remained a cipher. His eyes, dark and fathomless, held a storm of emotions she couldn't decipher. What did he want from her? What secrets lay hidden beneath his composed facade? He guided her through the labyrinthine corridors, his grip firm but not unkind. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Her pulse hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the rising tide of anxiety. She stole a glance at him, searching for some hint, some clue to his intentions, but his expression remained inscrutable. Was this another gilded cage? Another performance she was expected to play? They stopped before an unmarked door. Mr. Han produced a key, the metallic click echoing in the hushed hallway. He opened the door, revealing a lavishly furnished room, a stark contrast to the bustling casino floor. The air hung heavy with the scent of expensive cigars and something else, something indefinably familiar. A memory flickered at the edge of her consciousness, a fleeting image of a man, his face obscured by shadows. She pushed the thought away, her mind reeling from the rapid succession of events. "This is," she began, her voice a mere whisper, but he cut her off. "A place where we can talk," he said, his voice low and resonant. His eyes, finally meeting hers, held a strange mixture of intensity and sorrow. "A place where the truth can finally be revealed." The truth. The word hung in the air, charged with unspoken meaning. Xiao's heart pounded against her ribs. What truth? What secrets were about to be unveiled in this opulent prison? He gestured towards a plush armchair. "Sit." She hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to flee, to escape the suffocating tension that filled the room. But something held her back, a morbid curiosity, a desperate need to understand the forces that had shattered her life. She sank into the chair, her body rigid with apprehension. Mr. Han moved towards a nearby table, where a decanter of amber liquid and 2 glasses sat gleaming in the soft light. He poured 2 drinks, his movements precise and deliberate. He offered her one, his hand steady. "You look like you need this," he said, a flicker of something that might have been concern crossing his face. She took the glass, the crystal cool against her trembling fingers. She brought it to her lips, the liquor burning a path down her throat. The familiar warmth spread through her, a temporary reprieve from the icy grip of fear. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He took a sip of his drink, his gaze fixed on the swirling liquid. "Someone who has been waiting a long time for this moment," he replied, his voice laced with a bitterness that sent a shiver down her spine. "Waiting for what?" He set down his glass, the crystal ringing softly against the polished wood. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "For revenge." The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Xiao's breath caught in her throat. Revenge? Against whom? What role did she play in this twisted game? Suddenly, a voice cut through the tense silence. "Feng Li." The name echoed through the room, sharp and clear. Xiao's head snapped up, her eyes widening in disbelief. Feng Li. Mr. Han was Feng Li. The boy who had vanished 10 years ago, the heir to the Feng fortune, the son of the man who had been her father's closest friend. The boy she had secretly admired from afar. He turned towards the voice, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. Standing in the doorway was Mrs. Zhou, her face pale and drawn, her eyes wide with fear. Behind her stood Zhang Jincheng, the man Xiao had once considered a mentor, his face twisted into a cruel smirk. "You shouldn't have come here," Feng Li said, his voice dangerously low. "I had no choice," Mrs. Zhou replied, her voice trembling. "They're coming for my son. They'll kill him just like they killed your father. And you think I can protect you? You're the only one who can," she pleaded, her eyes filled with desperation. "You know the truth. You know what they did. The truth." It was a tangled web of lies and deceit, woven over years of betrayal and conspiracy. Xiao listened in stunned silence as Mrs. Zhou revealed the intricate plot that had destroyed both the Feng and Xi families, a plot orchestrated by the very people they had trusted most. Zhang Jincheng, the seemingly benevolent counselor, was the mastermind behind it all, manipulating events to seize control of both families' fortunes. He had used Xiao's father, framing him for embezzlement, driving him to ruin and ultimately, to his death. He had then orchestrated the downfall of the Feng family, eliminating anyone who stood in his path. Xiao felt a wave of nausea wash over her as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The whispered rumors, the veiled threats, the unexplained disappearances, it all made sense now. She had been a pawn in their game, a victim of their greed and ambition. Feng Li, his face a mask of controlled rage, listened intently to Mrs. Zhou's confession. His eyes, dark and fathomless, held a storm of emotions that mirrored her own. He had returned to seek justice for his family, to avenge the wrongs that had been committed against them. And now, Xiao realized, their fates were intertwined, bound together by the shared tragedy that had shattered their lives. The air in the room crackled with tension. The game was far from over. It was just beginning. The opulent ballroom, once abuzz with the feverish whispers of bidders, now echoed with an unsettling quiet. The gilded cage, its bars a mockery of freedom, stood empty. Xiao felt a tremor run through her, a strange mix of relief and dread. The auctioneer's gavel still rang in her ears, a final, brutal punctuation mark on her life as she knew it. Sold. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. She could still feel the phantom weight of unseen eyes upon her, stripping her bare with their avarice. A virgin. The label, so carelessly applied, felt like a brand. Mr. Han. The name, whispered by the secretary, was a cipher. He moved through the world like a shadow, his presence both commanding and strangely elusive. His motives remained a puzzle, the pieces scattered and obscured. He had bought her, yes, but for what purpose? The thought coiled in her stomach, cold and tight. The car ride was a blur of city lights streaking past, each one a tiny, insignificant spark in the vast, indifferent darkness. Beside her, Mr. Han remained silent, his gaze fixed on the window. His profile, sharp and angular, was etched against the fleeting neon glow. Xiao stole glances at him, her mind racing. He was a mystery she desperately needed to unravel. Her family's ruin, the whispers of conspiracy, the sudden, inexplicable bankruptcy, it all felt connected to this man, to the hidden currents swirling beneath the surface of his composed exterior. They arrived at a sleek, modern building, its glass facade reflecting the city's restless energy. The secretary, efficient and discreet, led them to a private suite. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Xiao's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She felt a strange disconnect, as if watching her own life unfold from a distance. Mr. Han finally turned to her, his eyes, dark and inscrutable, holding her captive. Xiao, he began, his voice low and resonant, I know you have questions. Each word felt heavy, laden with meaning she couldn't yet decipher. She swallowed, the lump in her throat constricting her breath. Questions. I have a lifetime of unanswered questions. My father, his death, the collapse of our company, her voice trailed off, the words catching in the tangled web of grief and confusion. He was silent for a moment, the silence stretching taut between them. Finally, he spoke, his voice laced with a grim determination. Your father was a good man, Xiao. He was betrayed. Betrayed. The word struck her like a physical blow. Betrayed by whom? She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words caught in her throat. Mr. Han began to speak, his words painting a chilling picture of deceit, greed, and a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of power. He spoke of forged documents, manipulated markets, and a carefully orchestrated plan to destroy both her family and his own. As he spoke, a flicker of recognition began to dawn in Xiao's mind. The whispers she had overheard, the veiled threats, the strange coincidences, it all began to fall into place, forming a horrifying mosaic of betrayal. Zhang Jincheng, Mr. Han said, the name of venom on his tongue. He is the architect of your family's ruin. The name resonated with a sickening familiarity. Zhang Jincheng. Her father's trusted advisor, her own former class counselor. The man who had offered her comfort and guidance after her parents' deaths. A wave of nausea washed over her. Could it be true? Mr. Han continued, revealing details that sent chills down her spine. He spoke of a complex web of interconnected companies, shell corporations, and offshore accounts, all designed to funnel money and power into Zhang Jincheng's hands. He spoke of Mrs. Zhou, her desperate attempts to protect her son by cooperating with Zhang Jincheng, only to become another pawn in his game. Then, he dropped the bombshell that shattered Xiao's world. Zhang Jincheng was responsible for the death of my father, 10 years ago. He orchestrated the downfall of the phone corporation, just as he did with yours. He paused, his gaze boring into hers. My name. My real name is Feng Li. Feng Li. The name echoed in Xiao's mind, a ghost from a past she had barely known. The heir to the phone corporation, a name synonymous with power and prestige, now reduced to a whisper, a shadow. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a devastatingly clear picture. The shared tragedy, the parallel paths of destruction, the burning need for justice. It all converged in this moment, in this shared understanding of loss and betrayal. They left the building, the city lights now seeming to mock their newfound knowledge. Xiao felt a strange calmness descend upon her, the quiet before the storm. The fear remained, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was overshadowed by a fierce resolve. She would not be a victim. She would fight for justice, for her family, for Feng Li, for the truth that had been buried for so long. The final confrontation with Zhang Jincheng took place in his opulent office, overlooking the city he had sought to control. He greeted them with a veneer of polite surprise, the mask of a benevolent mentor firmly in place. But beneath the surface, Xiao could sense the flicker of unease, the fear that he had underestimated them. The ensuing conversation was a carefully orchestrated dance of accusations and denials, truths and lies. Xiao and Feng Li presented their evidence, piece by painstaking piece, dismantling Zhang Jincheng's carefully constructed facade. His denials grew weaker, his composure cracking under the weight of their accusations. Finally, cornered and exposed, Zhang Jincheng's mask shattered. The veneer of civility dropped away, revealing the ruthless, calculating predator beneath. He confessed, his words dripping with venom, revealing the depths of his greed and his callous disregard for human life. He spoke of the satisfaction he derived from watching his enemies crumble, from wielding the power to destroy lives and fortunes. Xiao listened, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. The truth, so long sought after, was more bitter than she could have imagined. But with the truth came a sense of purpose, a burning desire to see justice served. The legal proceedings that followed were long and arduous, but in the end, Zhang Jincheng's reign of terror came to an end. The web of deceit he had so meticulously woven unraveled, exposing the corruption that had festered beneath the surface. As Xiao stood on the steps of the courthouse, the setting sun casting long shadows across the city, she felt a sense of closure, a fragile peace settling within her. The fight was over, the battle won. But the scars remained, a constant reminder of the price of truth and the long, arduous journey towards justice. Beside her, Feng Li stood silent, his presence a comforting weight in the gathering dusk. Their shared loss, their shared fight, had forged a bond between them, a connection that transcended the wreckage of their pasts. They had faced the darkness together and emerged, scarred but unbroken, into the uncertain light of a new dawn.